I think we're live. The moment someone sees me live, please tell me that I'm live because I am not going to know until the last minute. And this time, I think everything works, so it's completely fine. Just going to make sure I am on the live video manager thing, just so I can get a proper idea of what's going on. I love this early point of stream because it's the part where no one actually knows if everything works or not yet. Live control room is live. Fandabidozy. Whether or not it's staying alive, we'll find out. The lack of movement is absolutely terrifying right now. Also, I think I need to move the microphone back to where it normally goes. But I've got some Haribos in the way. Absolutely heartbreaking. Anyway, whilst we're doing this faffy bit, how are we all doing? We all good? Evening, Danny. How are you doing? I've just seen that pop up in the YouTube thing without popping up in Streamlabs. There we go. Hi, Danny. How's it going? I hope you're well, to be honest. This is going to be a very, very stressful stream because I love talking about how Leeds are an absolute nightmare. It feels like all that I do because I set up the original deadline day stream with the idea that, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be nice and flexible. We'll talk things through. It won't all be Leeds because there's all sorts of stuff happening. And then there wasn't all sorts of stuff happening. And then there was losing Lewis Sinisterra. That was funny. All good. Hope you are. Cheers, Danny. Right. Now I know that things are up and running, I will get into it. So, Leeds United's transfer window this season was an incredibly hectic one with all sorts of things happening all the time. That included a lot of players going out, a bunch of players coming in, a last-minute departure that we'll get into, and a hell of a lot of staff rotation as well as just the players. So what I'm going to do in this stream is I'm going to talk through the players that left, the players that came in, some of the other members of staff, and if the squad's in a better place than it was before the start of the season. So, going to start off with the permanent outgoings. And this is people that haven't necessarily left on a permanent transfer deal, but have at the very least gone on loan and will not come back, have no chance of coming back in the slightest. A few games' time will tell us just how good or bad it was. I think it was spoilers. I'm not going to tell you yet. So I'm going to start with one of the few players that did leave permanently on a paid deal, and that is Rodrigo. Now, Rodrigo is one of the players that I'm sort of annoyed that we don't have at the club anymore, partially because of his stats on FB Ref. You can see here he scored basically every 50 minutes or so at Leeds. Hell of a lot of good passes, hell of a lot of progressive passes. He tackled and intercepted from the front, which was also absolutely incredible. It's just what you need in a centre forward. And now he's gone. We sold him to a club in Qatar. Now, I completely understand, in all likelihood, he had a release clause and he decided to go permanently, and that's completely fine. We will get onto that a little bit later. But he's someone that I feel like we've replaced with someone we'll get to later on, Joel Pirro. And it's not the worst replacement, but yeah. If anyone has any questions or anything, by the way, just pop them in the comments below. I will get to them as fast as I can. Another forward that left Leeds United, and I completely forgot was under contract with us, is Tyler Roberts. Now, Tyler Roberts is a little bit less impressive, shall we say, than Rodrigo. I'm going to hop over to his numbers now. You can see his non-penalty goals. They say they're quite high, but this is saying it's against attacking midfielders and wingers. He's neither of those things, so that feels like it's basically cheating. 2 and a bit shots per match, decent amount of interceptions, decent amount of clearances, decent aerials won, but when he played at Leeds United, he wasn't any good in the slightest. He had his odd little streaky bits. He played a lot under Bielsa, specifically in the first, was that the first? In the second and first seasons of the Premier League. He got lots of minutes, but he was permanently injured and wasn't really good enough for Leeds. A few £100,000 in, that's fine enough. I don't think any of us expected to keep Tyler Roberts. On the subject of Tylers, we have Tyler Adams, who has gone to Bournemouth for £20 million. Bournemouth we will get into in more detail later on. Tyler Adams is one of those players that I think Leeds would have missed if we would have stayed in the Premier League, but not now we've been dropped down to the Championship, if all that makes sort of sense. So I'm going to bring up his numbers as well. I'm going to do this for the vast majority of players purely because it's really easy to compare players by using these stats. He did nothing in the opponent's half. Let's be very, very clear about that. Absolutely zilch in the other box. No goals, a little bit of XG, one shot every like 100 minutes or something insane like that. A little bit of expected assists, but nothing really worth calling home about. But where he really sort of excelled was his defensive stuff. He's in the top 4% for people at tackle, top 3% for blocks, great interceptions, great clearances, and he was just everywhere on the pitch. Now, I'd feel a lot worse about losing Tyler Adams in the event that we also didn't replace him, but we got a pretty perfect replacement that I'll go into a little bit later in Ethan Ampadu, and I think we're in a better position here because Ampadu is cheaper. Adams wouldn't have made that much of an impact in the Championship because it's not defensive plays that you really need. We'll get into that a little bit further later on. Next up, however, we have a comment to look at. Scoring goals won't be an issue, but leaking goals is often an issue under Farke. The thing is, I would worry if he went unreplaced, but what effectively happened was he was replaced by someone that came in for cheaper, and we used the spare money as well, if that makes sense, to reinforce in terms of in attack. We've got a reasonable enough defence. I'll get into that a little bit later. After Tyler Adams, we have one of the loanees that I think is gone permanently, and that is Robin Koch. It's going to be incredibly hard to get Koch back. Partially because he's left in the last year of his contract on loan. I feel like we're definitely not going to extend that contract because there's no point in us extending, seeing as he clearly didn't want to be here. There's no point in him extending because I'm sure the fans at Elland Road would definitely not want him to do that. It's a solution that made sense for everyone. What would have made more sense is being able to sell him for a bit more money, but that didn't come to pass in the end. In a similar position to that, we have Cody Drameh, single year left on the contract, gone out on loan. Did he go out on loan to Birmingham? I think. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember seeing the confirmation, but I'm assuming he went out on loan to Birmingham. Yeah, I don't think he was going to break into the team. He hasn't under many, many, many different managers, presumably for a reason. I don't know whether that's he just didn't fit their systems. It's a hell of a lot of systems to not fit, to be fair. Or if he's the sort of player that was demanding game time where he wasn't necessarily earning it in training. But it makes sense for him to go at the same time as Jamie Shackleton learning how to be a left back. Another player that is on the way out is Joel Robles. Let's be honest, we can't say that we saw much from him. He played a few games at the end of last season. Sorry, bit of a hiccup. And he didn't do very much in any of them. Standard goalkeeping performances, to be honest. He's not someone that we're really going to weep at losing, purely because he was sort of here-ish. That's the best you can say about him. Did you manage to get rid of the fraud, or is Bamford still around to miss huge chances? Bamford is still around. I think that it's really harsh to call him a fraud, partially because he's definitely not. He's proven that he can score a lot of goals. I think he scored 17 in one season in the Premier League or something, and was just very, very, very injured after that. We'll get into that a little bit more towards the end of the outgoings, players that perhaps should have gone out but didn't. But I don't think Bamford's one of those. I think the right sort of level for him is the Championship to get his confidence back up and then maybe kick on more in the Premier League again. But we will find out. Finally, in terms of players for the club to have lost, we have, quite sadly, Adam Forshaw. Adam Forshaw is the definition of Leeds over the past few years. He spent so long out injured that, if I'm looking at this right, yeah, he barely has a 2020-21 season on FBref. He's got 81 minutes in that year, and he barely showed up for something like 2 consecutive straight years, not even seasons, because he was the most injured man on the planet. He's the sort of player that losing makes sense, but I'd rather we kept. But as far as I've heard from various people, we weren't willing to put forward the wage that he wanted or something along those lines. He was happy to sign, but we withdrew the contract. Either way, we don't have Adam Forshaw anymore. It's basically fine, isn't it? I mean, he wasn't someone that was a fundamental part of the squad purely because he was so rotational because he was always injured. Also, I've noticed he's not played for Norwich City in the Championship yet, and he only has half an appearance in the PL2. So that's not the best sign for Norwich, having signed him. That is it for permanent outgoings, and then we have the raft of loan players that have left. There are so many of these that it is honestly shocking that it was allowed to happen. If you're not aware of the situation, what basically happened was you'll be aware of what a release clause is and a relegation release clause. If a club gets relegated, then they have to sell a player for a certain fee, assuming that it's offered by a club under certain conditions, such as a Premier League release clause might say if there's a Premier League club that comes in for a player with 10 million quid, they have to sell them. That wasn't the case at Leeds this summer. Leeds this summer decided to go for loan clauses for some reason, which meant that you still lost the player, but you didn't get a fee for them, which is why we lost Robin Koch effectively for free. The first of these was one that people were really annoyed at. It was Max Wöber. Wöber had, if I remember right, been wearing the armband in a pre-season friendly behind closed doors against Barnsley. He'd made all the right noises about staying at Leeds, and then he just ended up swanning off anyway. I think it was to Mönchengladbach, but I'm not 100% sure. It was an annoying one, because he was definitely a good player. He would definitely just rock the championship. But he decided he didn't want to be here, and in the words of Liam Cooper, if you don't want to be here, fuck off. That all just makes sense to me, and on that note, let's talk about Brendan Aronson. Brendan Aronson is someone that I'm again going to bring up the stats for, because initially I was sad that we were losing him because I thought he had some creative flair, I thought he was nice and fun and interesting to watch playing football, and then I had a look at the data, and then I realised, I don't think I care that much, because this is sort of pathetic. High tackles, brilliant, he presses well. High blocks, brilliant, he presses well. 0 non-penalty goals per 90, some non-penalty XG per 90, almost 2 shots a match. He's got some assists, but off the top of my head, he had something insane. Like, I've got to find the number for this because I don't want to get it wrong. He had something absolutely bonkers, like, 9 shots on target in an entire Premier League season when he played like 26 full 90s is not good enough. And I can completely understand why the club were like, yeah, all right, go on then. We don't need you. He's gone to Union Berlin now, and he has 2 starts. He's only played a total of 95 minutes, which means that he's someone that is immediately getting subbed off because he's just not good enough. If he's got injured, sorry, Brendan. But I think it's the right move for him to be loaned out. If he increases in value, then I can see the club selling him in future. I don't see him coming back. Got to be incredibly clear about that. I don't see Brendan Aronson finding any decent way back into the squad. But he's basically gone. On the subject of players that Leeds fans want gone forever, Rasmus Christensen. Rasmus also has reasonable numbers. Tackles good, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerials, all that. But we weren't sold a straight fullback. And that is what I think Leeds United's issue was from the fans. Fans were expecting someone that could bomb down the wings, score some goals, and they got Rasmus Christensen, who does neither of those things and was completely advertised to do so. He does it a bit for Denmark. He did it a bit for the club he was at before. I think it was Salzburg or Leipzig. It was one of the Red Bull stable. And he just isn't good enough at all. He's gone to Roma, not only doesn't start at Roma, but isn't going to make their Europa League squad, which, if you're a senior footballer, you should definitely be making the squad at the very least. I don't see us getting any money back for this guy. I see him coming back from loan next season and us having to ship him out somewhere again just because he's clearly not got the quality that we were initially advertised. And I think that is one of the big shouting factors of the recruitment that went wrong the season before, of the Jesse Marsh hires all of his friends, of the Victor Orta picks someone that has room to grow or hasn't reached their potential, because sometimes they just won't reach their potential. And as annoying as that is, we've got to be aware of that. On the topic of disappointing players that went to Roma, hello, Diego Llorente. Now, Diego Llorente is a very, very weird footballer. He had a couple of sort of good spells at Leeds, but if you look at his information here, his defensive stuff is at best average. Interceptions is in the top quartile. That's it. He's attacking. Decent passes to create opportunities, reasonable enough XG, good shot creating actions, but that's not what you have a centre-back for. You also don't have a centre-back to have legs like Bambi if Bambi had been hit with a baseball bat in every single one of Bambi's knees. It didn't work out for Diego Llorente at Leeds United. He wasn't here for the majority of last season. He's not going to be here this season. I don't see him being here at any point in the future. I can't remember if Roma have a permanent buy clause for him. If they do, good luck to him. He might be okay over there, but he certainly isn't over here. I'm going to have a quick look at his stats. 3 starts isn't too bad. He didn't even start. He only played 9 matches for Roma last season. He's a player that I'm surprised they took back. He's a player that I'll be even more surprised by if they decide to have permanently, because I don't think he's good enough. On the contrary, someone that has been getting absolutely rave reviews from Spain as of late is Marc Roca. Something that he has always been admired for is his long-range passing and his ability to sort of progress the ball up the pitch and get it moving in attack. He's quite strong. I wouldn't say at creating chances. He's the guy before the guy that creates the chance, if that makes sense. And that's everything that he's been doing at Betis. He's been playing alongside Isco quite a lot, and that's a partnership that really works. Roca does the solid passing work, whereas Isco does all the creativity and stuff like that. And I've watched them a few times for work, and Marc Roca genuinely looks like a player transformed. He can play 90 minutes now, which is incredible, and that's what you get when you have a coach that teaches players how to run. Sorry, Jesse Marsh, but your intensity only works when you have players that you do any fitness sessions with. Something that Daniel Farke noted when he came in was that none of the players were fit. The same was noted by Sam Allardyce, of all people, who doesn't exactly get people running. And I think he was really a victim of Jesse Marsh. If we get promoted, we might just keep him because he's quite good. If we don't keep him, then I assume we could get a decent fee for him because he has been setting La Liga on fire. Someone that needs to do a little bit more development now, these are the next couple, is Sonny Perkins. I feel a bit bad for Perkins because we signed him from West Ham and said, you're going to get more football, it's fine. And then we didn't really play him in the slightest. I looked for his page on FBref and I couldn't find it because there's just no data about Sonny Perkins because he's not played any football. We've sent him out on loan to Oxford. Hopefully he kicks on there and does some good stuff, but if not, then it looks like it'll be another case of we signed a young player with a lot of potential and it didn't get anywhere. That's fine. That happens to all clubs. Sonny Perkins, of all the loans that have gone out, seems like one of the ones that makes the most sense. The same applies for Sam Greenwood. Sam Greenwood, the vast majority of people that have managed him or played with him have said he's a very, very good player, but he's just not found his position yet. Previously a striker when we bought him from Arsenal, slid back into a number 10 role, slid back into a number 8 role. Who knows? By the time we get him back, he might be a centre-back. We'll find out. I really want to see Sam Greenwood do quite well at Middlesbrough. I think he scored in his first match for them as well, which is really good. But I want to see him back at Leeds. I want to see him performing because I think he can be absolutely huge for the club in the years to come. Someone that has previously been huge for the club in his, I think, 5 seasons at Leeds, absolutely incredible run, is Jack Harrison, Jackie Harradona. Absolutely no one that supports Leeds United will begrudge him his move away, purely because he's done his bit. Let's be fair. I'm just going to have a little bit of look at his information for Leeds. He played 190 matches for us. He scored 31, 26 assists, countless chances created. Jack Harrison probably earned his move away. He's definitely a Premier League standard player. Whether or not he'll be that at Everton is yet to be found out because Sean Dyche is all I have to say there. But his first touch is impeccable. He's got the best first touch I've seen on a footballer. Aside from that, his eye for a pass is absolutely stunning. He's got a very sweet shot on him sometimes. He's not the most consistent, but he does his best with it. And yeah, I think Jack Harrison he'll be missed, but it's a player that it felt like it was time to go. I completely understand it. It's like when we sold Rafinha. He wants a move. He's earned a move. Fair enough. Off you go. Hope you get relegated, though. That would be quite funny. And now, we've done the players that have gone on loan that might come back. I forgot to put this guy in the permanent category because I really don't see Luis Sinisterra coming back to Leeds United. Now, I'm going to take a very, very quick delve into his numbers, partially because his are quite interesting. Incredible stats for non-penalty goals, great non-penalty XG, 3+ shots per match. Assists, not the best. Expected assists, not the best, but that's because he's a very direct player. His passing is good, his defending is good. I would love to see a player of that quality back at Leeds. However, he did sort of try to sue the club. and that's not something that you can come back from very easily. If you are any player and you're trying to force a move to that extent where a clause doesn't get done and you end up saying, that's nice, I'm going to do legal action now. I can see your point of view. You're a Premier League standard player. Sure, go for it. Why not? But you can't expect fans to want you back at any point. He was very injured all the time. Although he would have torn up the Championship, he's not the biggest loss because he didn't want to be here, and I refer back to Liam Cooper's words. Having gone through all of the various Judases, we have the incomings to do. I'm also going to take a very quick look at the comments. Goals edits, back to the references. Sinistera does continue to eat baby pandas, allegedly. We have no proof, but have you ever seen Luis Sinistera and an uneaten panda in the same room? No. You've also not seen him in the same room as a panda skeleton, but we'll leave that one aside. Thank you for popping in, Goals Edits. You are always an absolute wonder. If anyone has any more questions as well, just ping them in the comments. I will get to them as soon as I can. But on a similar note to the Luis Sinistera one, we hop into Jadon Anthony, who I believe is a banging signing for Leeds. Now, one of the things that concerned me was I felt like he wouldn't get that many minutes because he might not have previously at Bournemouth. And then I looked into his data and I'm just confused as to why they got rid of him. Last season, he started 11 matches. Fair enough, that's not too many. But he played in 30 matches with over 1,000 minutes of football. That's not too bad. And he got 4 goals and assists, and his stats are pretty good too. High levels of blocks, high level of clearances, brilliant with carrying the ball and taking players on, lots of touches in the other penalty box, progressive passes received is absolutely through the roof. He's really good at positioning himself. He gets a fantastic return in terms of scoring goals. I don't really see a big drawback to signing Jadon Anthony. He's a very direct player. He's a great replacement for Luis Sinistera, and I think that's going to be a good deal for us, especially since we've not really lost out on anything. Another player that I think has added a lot of depth, and we're going through loanees before we go through the permanent signings, just because they're the players that we can afford to have gone wrong because we've not really invested much money into them, is Joe Rodon. Now, we have a Spurs fan in the chat right now who presumably isn't that bothered about Joe Rodon because he was part of the big Spurs clean-out. But as much as he might not fit perfectly into the Spurs system, I think he's done really well at Leeds so far. In all of his matches, he's looked solid, he's looked assured, he's played well alongside Pascal Struijk, and that's what really matters at this level. You need solidity at the back because the more goals you concede, the worse it's going to be, and it doesn't feel like a coincidence that Leeds United's first clean sheet in months has come with Joe Rodon at the back because he's just reliable. Now, when we get Liam Cooper back, I don't know if he keeps his place. I don't know how often Charlie Cresswell rotates in. But the important thing is there's a lot more depth at centre-back now. We're not just relying on 2 or 3 defenders. Having lost Koch, Vuba, Christensen, Llorente over the summer, probably all permanently. I don't see any of them playing at Elland Road again. It's not a bad thing to have another fairly good centre-back. And all things considered, it might turn into a permanent. Who knows? I'm guessing that'd be if we get promoted, though. Another Spurs loanee that I was really excited by when he came on for a little bit of the second half against Sheffield Wednesday was Jed Spence. Quick check-in on the Spurs fan, by the way. I like Rodon, wasn't given a chance at Spurs and can play midfield as well. I think we're roughly okay in midfield, but I will get to that very, very shortly. Another player that was incredibly exciting that has come from Spurs on loan is Jed Spence. He's come with a loan fee of, I think, something like €1 million, £1 million, something like that. Nothing excessive. But we already saw when he came on, he was incredible at retaining the ball. He was a very direct player on the right flank. A good Ayling replacement because Ayling's main problem right now is that he can't get back and cover. Jed Spence definitely has the legs for that, and it's something that I can't wait to see throughout the rest of the season. Looking at his numbers, again, they're nothing too impressive, but his pass completion numbers are incredible. They're in the top 8% of all fullbacks. Similar for successful take-ons, he's in the top 4%, top 10% of progressive carries. He's a very aggressive fullback, and that's precisely what we need. Whether or not he does the defensive work as well, I think he will, but we'll find out when it comes to it. I think Jed Spence is potentially one of the signings of the window. It doesn't look like it'll turn into a permanent because we don't have the option or the mandatory buy clause or anything like that, but I can see it happening if we go up. Another fullback signing, and this one took a few people by surprise. He started training initially just to regain his fitness, was the official party line, and then he very quickly signed permanently with Sam Byram. Now, I'm going to have a very quick look at Sam Byram's numbers because they are, from what I can see, fairly good on the face of it. Quick check of the comments as well. Spence will be great. He adds pace to that side. Yeah. If he's a direct Ayling replacement, his pace will be absolutely incredible. But on the Sam Byram front, he took me by surprise because no one thought that ahead of the season he's someone that would sign permanently. When you were looking at former Leeds players to go at left back, everyone was saying Charlie Taylor instead. But then we got Sam Byram, and his stats aren't that bad. Although you have to note, he only played 15 matches last season. That is far from ideal because he's a very injurable boy, and he managed to get injured for Leeds already, which I was completely unsurprised by it was going to happen. That's why you need depth at left back. Parag, Kinnear, left backs, please. We do still have Junior Firpo. I've been told by some people that Jed Spence can play at left back. I guess Strout can be a left back, and so can Yelda. But I'd rather have another one, to be honest, especially since Sam Byram is a right back that's been converted over there. I think he's going to be a very good signing, depending on how fit he can stay. If we can get an entire season with one of Firpo and Byram fit, we'll be fine. If we can't, that's when the problems come in. Shackleton as well. He's proven himself to be fairly decent at left back, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Another signing for... Was he free or was he just incredibly cheap? Carl Darlow. I think something like £600,000 was a lot cheaper than I expected him to be, and that was fantastic. He was a bargain. Carl Darlow might not have the best numbers for a goalkeeper because he didn't get that many minutes at Newcastle. I'm just having a quick look. He played 8 matches for them this season before last, and then last season he only played 12 games for Hull. It's easy to see why he's a bit rusty. His passing is wild, to say the best. It's not that it's inaccurate, it's that it's incredibly hard and drilled at his defenders, which is often a bad idea, but I'm sure it'll work out. Yeah, he's someone that I think will have to grow into the system. He'll have to get better at playing the ball out, especially since that's a fundamental part of what we're doing. I'm a lot more comfortable now we've kept Meslier with Carl Darlow in goal. Whether or not it stays that way as the season goes on, we will find out. Then it comes to midfield. We discussed that a little bit with Joe Rodon coming in. We discussed that a little bit with losing a couple of midfielders like Mark Rocker. And I think the first one is a very good first pick. Glenn Kamara. Someone in a comment section told me that I was saying Kamara and Kamara was wrong, and that's fair enough. I'll go with Kamara from now on. We picked Glenn Kamara up from Rangers, where he apparently had been a little bit off the boil for the last season or so. He doesn't even have decent looking numbers on FBref because I can't find them. But his time at Rangers was decent enough. He got 12 goals and assists combined, which is not too bad for someone that plays as a box-to-box player, especially since he's not apparently the player that finishes the chances. He's the one that puts them on a plate. The dream for Kamara is he fits in nice and rotationally with Archie Gray because they both sort of fulfill the same role. If that is the case, then I think we're in a really good spot because Gray, although he's got a really high ceiling, isn't someone that we should be burning through because we saw what happens when you burn through a player when they're incredibly young and you rely on them. Calvin Phillips, Lewis Cook, Sam Byram, all Leeds players that we relied on incredibly heavily and then were injured a lot of the time as a result. I think Kamara gives us the flexibility to rotate with Archie Gray and sort of keep Gray safe so he can grow for a lot of seasons to come rather than getting hurt. Also in midfield, I think these two were announced on the same day, which was really cool, is Ilya Gruev. Ilya Gruev, I keep getting various bits of information wrong about because I keep thinking for some reason he's Hungarian. Quick comment. Kamara's loved Leeds, met Chris many times, and if he tries half as hard as Chris Kamara did for us, he'll be a great signing. I reckon he will. From what I can tell, the issue with Glenn Kamara when he was at Rangers, because he went off the boil a bit, was something to do with a racially motivated incident in his direction. I can completely understand why you would go off the boil in that case. If someone has been absolutely horrendous to you at a football club, you're not going to give your all for that club anymore, and I totally get it. I think Elland Road will back him because that's what happens. And going from Ibrox to Elland Road isn't the worst transition you can have because Leeds fans can be brutal sometimes. And I feel like if you've already been in a similar environment, great, you've got a decent enough transition going there. But another player that came at the same time was Ilya Gruev, and he's more of a straight-up defensive midfield player. We signed him from, let's have a quick look, Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga. He is a Bulgarian midfielder, and he's been very solid from what I can see of his various, like, A, stats, but B, highlights. He's a very firm tackler. I imagine he'd fill in the Ampadu role. There's a little bit of a rumour going around that Daniel Farke wants to play a sort of two central midfielders of Gruev and Ampadu, with Kamara in front as a box-to-box player. I can definitely see that against the more attacking sides in the league, like your Southampton, I suppose, Norwich, maybe. Definitely Leicester as well. But that sort of additional flexibility in midfield is something that Gruev gives us. It's not just having one defensive midfielder anymore and then being left to Bate, JB, players like that. It's depth is good, basically, in the Championship. It's 46 matches at the very least. We've already had 2 Carabao Cup matches. Could have a couple of FA Cup matches. That's 50 games of football, and you don't want to put Ampadu and Gray through every single one. That would be a horrendous idea. On the subject of Ampadu, I think he is one of our best signings of the summer so far. Primarily because Ethan Ampadu has already proven himself to be someone that gets absolutely everywhere on the pitch all the time. He's always making the blocks and challenges that we need. He's been impeccable, really, hasn't he? There's nothing bad you can say about it. Earlier on, I was saying you don't want to push Gray and Ampadu too hard, as if Ampadu was a permanent fixture. And he's not really had to adapt, which is incredible, because you forget that he's just 22 years old. He's about to be 23 in 8 days, so happy birthday, Ethan. But having a look at various bits of information, he's at 102 starts, and he's not even 23 years old yet. Played 29 for Venezia, 25 for Sheffield United, 31 for Spezia. Every season he's been on loan at a club, he's gotten relegated, but I feel like that's not his fault. That's just sort of happened to him. It's not going to happen at Leeds, presumably. That would be very, very bad, wouldn't it? Let's not discuss that. But he's the sort of player that is young enough to keep on growing with us. If we get promoted, then we'd keep him. He'd be a significant part of the squad because I think he's got that quality to him, or at least the potential to achieve it. Another player that I believe is a definitely retain for as long as we can tier player, Joel Pirro. Joel Pirro is one of those players where I opened FBref and went, that's a lot of green. It's a surprising amount of green. Solid amount of non-penalty goals. I might do this. I might compare him to attacking midfielders and wingers to make myself feel good. Yeah, above 50% in goals, XG, shots total, not in assists, but that's not what he does. He gets on the end of chances. Top 50% of expected assists, non-pen XG and expected assists and all that jazz. Really, really high pass completion, which is incredibly impressive. Top 3%, because if you're an attacker, you're always in the final third. You're passing in the very, very close vicinity of their defenders, which means there's an obscene chance of losing the ball. He also presses from the front a good amount of interceptions, which is going to matter quite a lot with the Championship's relatively sloppy passing. It all sort of depends a little bit, but I can see Pirro being a fundamental part of this, especially since in his debut he scored. I don't know what else you can ask. And then we have the end of my trip to FBref, but arguably the most important signing of the season so far. Just going to quickly see, is Daniel Farke on FBref? No. Okay. I didn't think he would be, but worth checking. Yeah, I think the most important signing is Daniel Farke, because the last 3, arguably 4 managerial appointments have been awful. Marcelo Bielsa was a manager that transformed the club in every single way. On the pitch, off the pitch, Thorpe Arch even changing random stuff where plug sockets are just to optimize every single detail. Apparently Bielsa had a single conversation with Darwin Núñez and now he's good again. That's what we're talking about here. And then he was immediately followed up by Jesse Marsh, who let all the details slip and the fitness dropped off a cliff. And then I believe it was Javi Gracia who took over. No, and then Skubala maybe took over. Decent performance once against Manchester United, but then there's a reason he's an under-21s manager. He didn't have the experience needed. And then it was Javi Gracia, who played an overly defensive and turgid style. And then it was Sam Allardyce, who did nothing. And in the last match of the season, when we needed a win, he played 6 at the back, which is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And now we're back to sanity, because Daniel Farke knows how to get promoted from the Championship. He's even done things like set targets for like how many goals the club need to score in the season. And honestly, the attention to detail is off the charts. I love it. It's brilliant. We're actually paying attention to what we need as a club now. Daniel Farke, I believe, is someone that won't necessarily get it done in one season. It'll take some adaptation. He's got lots of new players to deal with. Next summer will be a whole other bucket of crabs, because there's all the loan players returning that will have to be shipped out again or reacquainted with, which will feel borderline impossible. That's going to be insane to try and deal with. But for this season alone, I think his tactical nous and his ability to put a good side on the pitch is already showing. We've played very, very aggressive football so far. It's going well this far under Daniel Farke, and I want to keep him going. I very much thought Farke wouldn't work at Leeds. Delighted if I'm proven wrong. He's impressed me so far. Yeah, I was in a similar boat. I was in the boat of, it might have been Gladbach that he managed last. That it didn't work out there. I don't know why it'd work out here. But, and I hate this like little cliche of he knows the league, but he definitely does. He understands what he's dealing with. He knows that he knows what he has to do to get promoted, and he knows the team he has to put on the pitch to do that. And he's not afraid of being honest either, because he's also had some words in interviews about the board saying, I don't think we'll get anything else. I don't know if that's going to be enough. And then we did a lot more business because we've got a manager that wants the business done. I think Daniel Farke is an absolutely fantastic pick, to be perfectly honest with you. Thank you, Leeds House. I'm planning on doing a lot more of them, potentially post-match Leedsy stuff. Vala Margolis, indeed. Have you supported the Game of Thrones collection down here? Maybe. I've not read them all yet, but yeah. Yeah, I'm planning on doing more Leeds post-match stuff as I go on, but that should be fun. And then maybe a weekly scheduled stream as well, just to make sure there's always a permanent slot going on. We'll work something out. But I think Farke is potentially the best pick at manager for Leeds. His 4-2-3-1 works. He's done a decent bit of squad building. Left back, I feel like probably isn't his fault. But then again, if he's decided he doesn't want a left back, I guess we've got reasonable enough depth. We'll work something out, I suppose. I am going to pop the comments on time and time again now, in case anyone has any questions, because I'm happy to go through all of those. And then there's not too much to talk about Leeds-wise, to be honest, at the moment, because it's the international break, which everyone hates. Yeah, it's going to be a relatively short stream from me today, because I'm going to use the majority of it for a YouTube video. I'm going to have a look and see if there is anything at all that I missed in the chat as well, because I feel like there probably is, but who knows? Yeah, I feel like, in summary, though, the window has been a very, very good one. The best hires that we've made are almost certainly Joel Pirro, because he's exactly what we needed. We needed a centre forward. We got a centre forward alongside Daniel Farke, who's got a fantastic system coming. And I think Ethan Ampadu is a very, very low-key pick for the best transfer that we've made this window. A lot of people won't say it, but I think he sort of is. Jed Spence has to prove himself. So do the other two midfielders that haven't really had many minutes. And I think Joe Rodon has a massively high ceiling, but it all comes down to what happens in the coming weeks and months. I think a better time to judge this will be towards the end of December or January, whether or not we're up in the playoffs and competing for like automatic promotion places. If we are not by that point, it'll be a little bit disappointing. But then we've got another transfer window to try and do things in, because I'm 99% sure the 49ers aren't going to say, sod it, we will let our investment go awry, because it's quite a lot of money they've put into the club. Would you take Ayew on a free to cover Pirro on a short-term deal? He had a good World Cup for his age. I am going to quickly double-check that, because I can never remember which Ayew is Jordan and which Ayew is Andre. I think it's Jordan Ayew that we're talking about. I'll have a very quick look. I might need reminding on this one because I don't know for sure. I'll just search IU free agent and then I'll work from there. Andre, right, fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll have a very quick look. Andre IU. Let's have a quick look. He's a player I'd be on the fence about, to be completely honest with you, because I understand the club's current mentality of getting younger players that can keep on doing it, if that makes sense. So after the 2020-21 season, he stopped playing for Swansea, in which he got 16 goals that year. He took a year out and then moved to Nottingham Forest, where he played 13 matches and didn't do anything. Now, a lot of those matches were off the bench, and I completely understand that it's not the best situation to get chances in and score goals, but you'd hope for a little bit more than literally no attacking returns. He also only got 1 XG, to be fair, so I can't really blame him too much. But it's a spot where ideally, I read Pirro was Perlo. Imagine, that'd be so good. Imagine if we had Perlo. I mean, we did have Calvin Phillips, but not anymore. He did have a decent World Cup for his age, but I don't think that translates to club football. I think that would ultimately lead to him falling off a cliff a little bit, not getting the goals we needed, and I think it'd just be another player we can get frustrated at, whereas we've got a reasonable amount of depth at centre forward. We've got Pirro. Rutter can play there. It's not his favoured position, but it's not too bad. Patrick Bamford, we always forget about, is injured, but I think he can do a job in the Championship at the very least. He's a confidence player. Aside from that, we've got Mateo Joseph. We've got Gelhardt, who can play there. We've seen that at the top of his game, he's quite good, but it's a tricky one. I would have also quite liked another striker. I would have liked another number 10, to be fair, and a left back, but we didn't get any of them. So, yeah. We recover badly for Pirro. It depends, because I think if we are another month into the season and Rutter has scored 5 or 6 goals, I think we immediately change our view and say we don't need a striker, we need a left back instead. I think it's a massive question that will be answered as we go through time. We'll get there. It's hard to work out. There isn't a 9 among them worth their salt, but Bamford. Yeah, Bamford. I understand the frustration with Patrick Bamford. I do, because he's not been good the past couple of seasons. But I am one of those people that will always look at his first season in the Premier League and think, when you're fit and firing, there's not too much that's going to stop you, if that makes sense. 17 goals in like a Premier League season is nothing to sniff at. And 7 assists on top of that, because he's not just a pure finisher. I think there's a little bit more to him outside of that. Bamford can be a creator as well as someone that finishes off the opportunities. He just needs to be in the right position to do it. And I think in the Championship, he's against opponents that will help him to build up his confidence. If he's paired up with Pirro, he doesn't have to just be that straight number 9. He can drop in, be a little bit more of a 10, that sort of thing. I think he's a very flexible player who can get the job done. It's just about getting that confidence up. I'd love him to be fit, but it's not happening now, I don't think. Yeah, we'll find out, basically. It's hard to say. I'd love him to do well. I'd love him to continue kicking on and doing everything that he needs to at Leeds, but this season will be telling, I think. I think by January, maybe we'll work out if he's like ready. I'll have a quick look at what his injury is right now and what's keeping him out. Because if it's nothing too awful, like, it might be okay. He won't return before the first international break. So, in theory, he might return after the first international break. We'll find out. That's the break that we are at the moment. I haven't seen anything that's saying when he'll be back, unfortunately, but soon is the hope. Because that's where we can judge whether or not we've made a massive mistake in not getting another number 9 or not. If anyone has any more questions, just spam them in chat for me, or I will end up nipping off because I have various bits and bobs to do at the moment. Have I read the wrong thing there. I might have done. I think I probably have done, to be honest. Also, if you are currently watching and it's your first time, I would massively appreciate a subscribe and a like on the stream. It makes a huge difference when you're a channel of this size, because monetization feels at the start of the journey like some massive mountain that you're never going to reach. And then eventually you get closer and closer and closer, and you realize that every single viewer makes a difference. So if you're not subscribed yet, I'd hugely appreciate if you could drop a like on this, comment all you can, because anything to help the algorithm is absolutely brilliant. If there are no further questions, I'm going to nip off now. I have a surprising amount of Starfield to play. I've not gotten addicted to it just yet. It's on the way, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to nip off. I'm going to leave it there. This will be a video that is up tomorrow, so please give that a watch, like that, comment on it, let me know what you think, and yeah, see you later.